It can be difficult, ladies and gentlemen, to distinguish between an Archon and your own negative thinking. Now, we talk on this channel a lot about how our thoughts are often not our own. And we also talk about certain exercises on this channel that I call the 4 inner exercises or magical exercises. And we can use these tools to locate where non-authentic thoughts are emanating from within our own psyche. I've said it once and I'll say it again. You can sit in a dark room, turn the lights off, attempt to empty your mind completely. See what happens. Try to enter a state of no thinking. You will be bombarded with an entire smorgasbord of appetites, thoughts, mental images, certain words repeating. These are bouncing around in our unconscious mind constantly. And they're influencing and shaping the direction at which our thoughts are formed. See what I'm saying? Now, there's a myriad of nonsense in the programmed mind. And until you can see it and witness it through your own desire to see that, through the exercises, again, the 4 inner exercises, the magical exercises, until you see this stuff, you will not know what I'm talking about until you witness it yourself. This takes a considerable amount of leverage, a considerable amount of effort, a considerable amount of time to really weed out which parts of your psyche are yours and which are not, and which have been molded by culture, where your appetites are, not necessarily your appetites, but where your emotions are spawning from. Again, remember in the Matrix film, the first Matrix, know thyself? Wasn't that written above the Oracle's door? And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't she put a huge emphasis on that? Know thyself, the most important step. What do you think knowing yourself is, folks? You are not your name. You are not your job. Right? You are not your bank account. You are not your credit score. You are, ladies and gentlemen, on the deepest parts of yourself, you are programmed. And until you can witness that programming, if I can speak tonight, and change it, folks, you're never really going to know yourself, because you're not going to be able to see the basic foundational pillars of what makes you think the way you think. You're not going to be able to see the structural pillars that are spawning the emotions that influence the way you think. See what I'm saying here? I really do indeed hope you do. So, folks, it can be difficult due to our sheer amount of conditioning, and most people aren't even aware of it because they don't go inward. They don't have a system of tools for locating which parts of their psyche are theirs and which are influenced by culture or which are influenced by archons or negative thinking. See what I'm saying? Where was I going with that? Excuse me. I had kind of a brain fart there. It can be difficult to differentiate between archons influencing your thoughts and your own negative thinking and feeling loop. So, for instance, as a young developing child, you could have had weight issues that potentially lingered into adulthood. And you may have been ridiculed by unloving family members. And instead of being encouraged to get healthy, you were made fun of. This was also mimicked by your peers, your friends, their families maybe. I'm just giving an example. So at a young age, while you were still developing, while your brain was literally still developing, folks, you underwent a lot of trauma that made you get inside of your head, right? You became embarrassed of yourself. Again, I'm speaking in a hypothetical, or using an example here, a made-up one. Now, if something like that were to happen and really get to you and make you feel a certain way, a non-beneficial way, you can create negative thinking loops that every time you entertain them, folks, they gain more traction. The RPMs start spinning faster. See what I'm saying? And eventually, if these are not checked and changed, they will gain so much momentum that they can take over your mind by way of influencing your emotions. Because traumatic things, folks, They're very emotional, are they not? So you can actually create, through your own negative thinking, a self-maintaining feedback loop of negative feeling that becomes so powerful because you sustain it and feed it so often by entertaining it, that it becomes a foundational pillar of your own psyche. Now, is this an Archon? A negative spirit influencing you? Not necessarily. It could be your own unchecked thinking and feeling, based on the sum total of things that happen to you up until this point in life. I hope that makes sense. That was kind of a word soup. So, those who walk the path of the magician, a huge part of that path is personal responsibility for your actions, and most importantly, folks, for your thoughts. Because real magic will teach you of the potency and power of your own mind, first and foremost. Magic is a system of rituals, tools, meditations, yantras, mantras, you name it, mudras, to help us really understand who we are. Again, it is the, how would I say this? It is how you know thyself, right? Because magic gives you the tools to go into the deepest parts of yourself so that you can know yourself. These layers of our being are damn near impossible to get a hold of in the conscious mind by itself. Do you see what I'm saying? My verbal fluency is a little off right now, so I apologize. Magic with a K, not a C. This is not theatrical magic. This is the art and science of the mind. This allows you to know yourself, folks. And one of the ways that it allows you to know yourself first and foremost is by allowing you to peer past the veil of the conscious mind so that you can interact with the subconscious, the deepest parts of yourself, the real abyss, the black waters, the land of the shadow. This is where all your traumas, all your repressed urges, etc., lie. And culture has created a carnival ride to distract you from getting to know yourself, and it keeps you in a particular bandwidth where you're basically just using your body heavily and a very minimal fraction of the totality of your mind. And here in this matrix, you can numb yourself, you can distract yourself, you can really lose yourself by way of never getting to know yourself. Because whether you want to believe it or not, folks, you exist simultaneously on multiple different levels. And many of these levels that which we exist on, the majority of the populace are never going to fully understand in this lifetime. They're not even going to ever really unravel the fact that they exist. We are a hyper, intra, omni-dimensional entity. We have a flesh being that appears to be material, but in essence, everything material is actually immaterial. The world is an illusion. We have a spirit anchored in this flesh. And we exist on various different mental levels, various different emotional levels, an expansive array of spiritual levels. Again, we have multiple different energy fields that emanate off of our body that connect us to certain spiritual kingdoms. In a state of enlightenment, a large majority or part of the enlightenment period or process is you coming into contact with these parts of your being that you don't even know exist. This is the whole you. Know thyself. See what I'm saying? So we have been led astray and we've gotten lost. But we have the tools to find ourselves again, and it begins by getting to know yourself, folks. And I don't want to be repetitive here, but this is why the 4 inner exercises are so important. You can find out how to do all of them by clicking the links in the description box below. I'm going to link the videos where I discuss these inner exercises in greater detail, and I'm going to post links on direct instructions on how to do these exercises. They're very easy to understand how to do. It's not rocket science. The difficulty inherently that lies in them is you choosing to do them. Because this is an exercise, much like lifting weights, and when you haven't exercised your whole life, lifting weights can be kind of, a lot of people don't like exercise. But physical exercise is one thing. I've found over the years that mental exercise is even more intolerable to most people than the physical exercises. Because we at least use our physical body on a daily basis. These parts of our mind that we use to unravel the deeper parts of our mind, we don't use those. Not consciously. We may while we sleep, while we dream, while our body repairs itself, while our mind rejuvenates itself. But consciously, folks, we're not using these. It drives many people bonkers, for instance, to do one of the exercises known as the thoughtlessness exercise, as well as the the motionlessness exercise, where you freeze your body for a prolonged period of time without trying to move once. You're not going to move at all. Watch what happens. It's not uncommon for people to start itching, to get really hot, for their body to start twitching, for their mind to become incredibly angry, because, guys, the programming runs on its own volition behind our conscious mind. I'm talking about the programming that has turned us into the non-authentic self. When you do something, for instance, like the motionlessness exercise, you temporarily hijack the trajectory in natural cadence at which your programming operates from behind the scenes, and it agitates a response in it. And you'll feel it. I've talked about this extensively in the past, so I'm not going to get into some huge detailed expose about it right now. All I'm going to say, folks, is that many people aren't going to do these. And that's just the way it is. Are there other ways to get to know yourself? Sure. But I can assure you guys, just flying off into the Amazon and doing ayahuasca once is not just a surefire way to get to know yourself, for instance. Sure, entheogens, certain psychedelic compounds, they have their purpose. But when you reserve all of your learning about yourself, or your attempt to learn about yourself, to an occasional trip, that's a problem. These tools, these Gnostic and theogenic sacraments can open doors for us. It can show us new things. But when it wears off and you've been gifted with the gnosis of the fruit of the gods, for instance, the food of the gods, when you've been enlightened through these certain constituents, these sacraments, you are now at a fork in the road where you can revert back to where you were prior, or you can build off of what you've learned. And that takes putting in the time while sober also. You see, I see a lot of people getting really into psychedelics. And it's like the only spiritual practice that they actually put in is the microdosing or the tripping or this, that, and the other. Guys, it takes a hell of a lot more effort than just taking something, right? The real power comes from the friction of action, the friction of determination. All of these things combined can pull us out of our rut. So we have a influenced psyche, and the 4 inner exercises prove this. Most of you already know this without having to do these exercises. There is, however, a gathering interest in archons and their ability to influence the mind. These are what we can consider malicious entities that are working against humanity by vampirizing them on invisible layers of existence that we can no longer see due to our habituation and the fact that our senses, due to maladaptation and habituation, we only now see into the visible light spectrum. See what I'm saying? There is that's just a very simplified definition of an archon, so don't take that as it's a firm definition. It's only a piece to the puzzle. But there is, as the sands of time spill forward or down into the hourglass, and people are waking up, more and more people are becoming interested in archons, malicious entities, non-organic, non-corporeal entities that influence the mind. And this is a good thing, but it can also be a very bad thing, because the immaturity level of the people oftentimes will lead, and how would I say this? And I want to try to gingerly word this out before I wrap this video up. Give me 1 second. Without a certain sense of knowing who you are, by going inward and doing the work, you can think that all forms of negativity in your life are the byproduct of an Archon. And by believing this, folks, it can be a lie that you're telling yourself. You see, there are authentic cases of Archons feeding on people, manipulating their lives, etc. But there are equally people whose programming and negative thoughts are largely influenced by the traumas in their life and how these traumas have affected their development. And the affected development changes the trajectory of how the mind matures, the emotional body matures. And if these things aren't healed after they happen, and more often than not, they're not, you can create these self-sustaining negativity loops that operate behind your conscious mind that influence you with negative emotions. And the emotions are largely like the fountainhead at which thoughts are structured. How you feel often dictates what you think. So many people think they're being attacked by Archons. Many people think they're targeted individuals, but they're not. And this is one thing that's really hard for people to accept, because people don't want to believe that they are causing a majority of their problems in their life, folks. But the path of magic is one of responsibility. It's one of honesty on all levels. I'm talking about with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself to know yourself. You've got to let your guard down and sometimes let go of thinking that you're always right. And not to be repetitive, but these inner exercises allow you to puncture through your own established protective membrane between you and the lies you tell yourself. You can cut through it and see that, whoa, okay, maybe I'm causing a lot of my issues without knowing it. It's a hard thing for people to accept. It really is. That you could potentially be the root of many of your problems. Not necessarily that it's not that you're a bad person. It's that certain things may have happened to you along the way that caused or manipulated, God damn it, your development. You see, you were never taught how to think properly at a young age, were you? No, you had a few good years where your imagination was allowed to play, and then it was snuffed out, and you were forced into the goddamn education system where they taught you what's important, right? Chasing grades, chasing certain ideals. You know, they put the idea of college in your head now at such a young age. It's like this is just sick. And here's the thing, a lot of the traumas come from the education system. Because the education system at a young age is what teaches you to be or want to be part of the collective herd. Everybody wants to have a friend at school, right? No one wants to sit alone at that lunch table. So what do? You try to integrate. And oftentimes by integrating, you let go of some of your own morals. I've done my own recapitulation and gone back and seen situations where I did this. Where I let go of some of my unique qualities at a young age because I wanted to have friends. Are they really even friends, guys? But what else are you going to do at a young age? You don't know any better. Your brain's still maturing. Your body, your mind. So they put us in a hedge maze. And oftentimes we don't realize we're in the hedge maze until much later on in life. And by the time we wake up to the fact that we were in a hedge maze, there's a lot of work that has to be done to go back and see just what happened. To see where things went wrong, kind of like that Tool song Schism. I know the pieces fit because I watched them fall away. You see, we can go inward and see where the pieces fell away. But it's hard to do that at the 9-to-5 job while you're stressed. You know, you're on Prozac and benzos because of your anxiety, and you have to go to work every day to pay the bills and you hate it. I mean, think about how insane all of this stuff is. It's hard to go inward and understand all of this stuff so that you can see it and let go of it, right? And transmute it alchemically. When you've got all these bills and you've got all this nonsense and you've got to go home and make dinner and repeat. See the hedge maze they put us in? The narrow path is almost impossible to witness, let alone walk it. The narrow path is damn near invisible. It is very difficult to sense, let alone get on. Like I said earlier, this requires an inordinately large amount of work, of mental energy and fortitude, so that we can go back, figure all the pieces out, correct the errors, and then be clear again. Like we once were when we came into this world innocent. We were brought into a sinful, dirty world, folks. This is like a reflection of the dirtiest parts of the astral plane here. The physical dimension is largely evil. The material realm is evil, folks. Not because, how would I say this? It's because, ladies and gentlemen, somewhere along the line, a large majority of the wrong people got the majority of the power, set up the banks, created this mess, and we're brought into it, and we're forced into it like a conveyor belt before we even have time to really mature spiritually enough to understand what we're interacting with here in this world, where we are, what our purpose is, etc. You see, they throw you here in a state of amnesia. We all have amnesia, spiritual amnesia. We don't know who we are, what our purpose is, why we're here. We don't know whether or not God is real or what happens beyond death. You see all these uncertainties? And you're going to try to think that you understand yourself when we don't even know what all this is, really? Really? Everything that operates the world right now, the core pieces of logic, the priori knowledge, it's all fucking theories. No one really knows what this is. But you've got it all figured out, right? And you haven't been programmed. Bull fucking shit. Ladies and gentlemen, tough love wake-up call. Bull fucking shit. Man. So, I'm not here to invoke fear into people. People don't have to watch this channel. I can see how my message might come across as frightening or negative because it almost sounds hopeless in a sense. But I can assure you it's not. You see, all I'm here to do is deliver a message about a handful of things. And one of those core things is the habituation of the human mind, the programming of the human mind. And this happens in a myriad of ways while developing. It lingers after we reach adulthood, but guys, a large majority of our programming is solidified and turned into concrete at a young age, especially the fear programs. This is why you started having nightmares. Ever wonder what happens when you're a little girl or a boy, innocent, with no idea of what horror is, and you see a horror film of someone being stabbed to death? Yeah, it might be, quote, entertainment. It's kind of sick entertainment, isn't it? But at a young age, you don't have the filters to be able to distinguish what's real and what's not, per se. And it jars your mind. You start to have nightmares because of the fear. And the fear, if not healed, ladies and gentlemen, and it's not here. People don't heal their fear at a young age. Most people's parents are fucking damn near brain dead. They're not going to know that their child has trauma. See what I'm saying? If the fear goes unhealed, the archetypes that go into the subconscious will begin to bloom into the dreams. You start having, again, nightmares. And when you have a nightmare, as a young child, you wake up and you're freaked out. It's the fear, it's like it's the fire's being built. There's more wood being thrown on the fire. And days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and now there's all the, like, I remember all the nightmares I had when I was a young boy. The fear is one of the biggest programs. And you have it. Whether you're aware of it or not, I don't need to hear your shit. You can come on here and tell me that you don't have fear programming. Have you done the work, fool? Have you really? Have you gone beyond your mind's normal limits that have been programmatically pushed on you? You've turned it into who you are. Have you really? Don't tell me you don't have the fear that you've got it all figured out, folks, because we live in a world of uncertainty to a large extent. There are things in our minds stored away that would blow your wildest dreams. But it takes effort, time, and determination to do those things. And the 4 inner exercises are just the beginning of this. I'm going to wrap this one up. Peace be with you all.